it's about diving into what really is causing the unhealthy habits to begin with. And I always talk about how fitness and health and wellness begins with the F word, and that usually perks up a few ears. And that F word is forgiveness.
Wow.
So often people are going through life with so many resentments, and they're bitter, and there's so many things that have not been taken care of from an emotional standpoint, that they are using food as medicine.
Join the conversation and welcome to Inside Voice. Hello, friends, and welcome. If you're struggling with health issues, low self esteem, or stubborn pounds that you've tried endlessly to conquer, you're definitely going to enjoy our program today. Wendie Pett, a nationally recognized name in the fitness industry, is passionate about motivating and encouraging people to make fitness and nutrition part of their daily routine. She enthusiastically teaches the care of mind, body, and spirit, assisting others to learn the importance of reaching their full God-given potential through her Visibly Fit program. And Wendie, you are a dear friend, and I am so glad to have you on the program today. Welcome.
Thank you. It is an honor and a privilege, and I just adore you, and your show is great. And so thanks for having me.
Likewise. Well, listen, we've had these conversations many times, and I respect you tremendously. And that's why I'd love for your voice to be heard today. You know, one of the questions that I would have for you is, what would you say the most common underlying issue is with most of the clients that you work with? Because, you know, a lot of people struggle with a lot of these things. What would you say that most common underlying issue is?
Yeah, that's a great question, Brenda. I really think that, most people think, oh, I just have bad habits, or, I'm too busy, and, or it's just genetic, or the kind of thoughts that go through people's minds, that's kind of the pitfall. But really what I would say is that people are not really addressing the real root issue to their problems. And it's usually different than what they think. It's not, oh, I have a few bad habits. It's usually deeper than that. It's usually an emotional kind of issue that needs to be pulled out at the roots, and really, first of all, unraveled. And sometimes it can be something that's been a traumatic childhood experience that's really
Wow.
just taken hold of the person and allowed those counterfeit comforts to set in over time. And really, it's about diving into what really is causing the unhealthy habits to begin with. And I always talk about how fitness and health and wellness begins with the F word, and that usually perks up a few ears. And that F word is forgiveness.
Wow.
So often people are going through life with so many resentments, and they're bitter, and there's so many things that have not been taken care of from an emotional standpoint, that they are using food as medicine, or maybe there's other substance abuse, or over shopping, or just drowning their unhealthy emotions that they aren't willing to address with social media, or whatever that they need to numb out with. But I think that's the bigger issue, is that we have to get to, why are you doing what you do? Why do you feel the way that you feel? Because we can't change your habits and get you on a healthy trajectory until we figure out the root cause.
I so agree. And I think what I've seen from most coaches, because really, I mean, you can go anywhere online and find health and nutrition coaches. But what I love about your approach is that you are taking it a step deeper and you're addressing those things. You mentioned trauma, which, you know, I can certainly relate to. And throughout much of my life, and I've never been a real overeater, but I have used food, at times to be a comfort. So I think
Sure.
that, we have to learn, would you say we have to learn what those triggers are and then begin to identify them? And, what does that look like for someone who may not even recognize that about themselves?
Yeah, I think, first of all, you have to acknowledge, right? What we don't acknowledge, then it never gets dealt with. So, first of all, you have to be really raw and authentic with yourself and say, all right, enough is enough. Why am I really doing this self sabotaging, um, you know, action to myself? What is it accomplishing? Because really, it's just a momentary escape, but it never solves the problem. And so, really getting to just, okay, what's going on,
Yeah.
and giving yourself grace through the process. I think sometimes we can feel just ashamed or that guilt and all the negative emotions on that end too, as we try to unravel what's really at the the crux of why we do what we do. And so getting to that root cause is it's a journey. And right. So for some
Yeah.
people, they can get a little bit help, from a coach or maybe just a counselor, and then they're okay. They're on track. But for some people, it may take years. But it's being bold and rising up to really understanding that God does not want you to stay in this place of despair, in this place of really feeling just in a place of I
Bondage.
that unforgiveness, that
Yeah.
bondage, exactly, that unforgiveness place,
Yeah.
and starting to see yourself through the eyes of the Lord will change things. So, yeah, I really just help my clients unravel what maybe they don't even realize they're in. And so just by asking questions, really,
That's
not by
good.
telling them, but
And
asking them questions.
and probably learning new coping skills, or not just even coping,
Exactly.
but what I hear you saying is you're talking about the difference between maybe rewarding oneself with a treat as opposed to loving oneself and rewarding themselves with good health and energy and sustenance and long life. I think too, I've really been taken back by the lack of or some of the health issues that we see among even our youth, and with the introduction of fast food chains, and a couple generations ago, people started taking their children to McDonald's and all the different fast food chains that were targeted toward children. And so a lot of the kids now have grown up on junk food and are developing major food intolerances and food allergies. So this
Type
is
2
not,
diabetes.
yes, this is not just an age group per se that is anymore, perhaps dealing with just hormone issues or aging, but really we're looking at an entire generation of our young people who are now dealing with a lot of health issues. How can you help rewire, and what kind of things do you have to address with younger people?
Well, first of all, I would say that it's an issue with our society. We are an instant gratification society, and so when our children are overweight and they're developing different diseases, it is the the parents' fault, I will say, because we are the ones that go and buy the groceries. They are not in
Yeah.
control of that, and so it's important that we also understand that marketing is big. There's a lot of money put into marketing, and that's one of the reasons even they put high sugar cereals on the aisle so that it's
They're
eyeball to
addictive.
eyeball with the little children. You're right, because they're colorful and they've got the little characters, and they try to make it so fun and exciting, and then it's really just causing havoc on their health. And so, really, how do we unravel that? We have to see what's behind all the marketing. We have to see that there's big money behind it, even from the pharmaceutical side of things, and to really wake up. Really, we
Yeah.
have to wake up and see what's really going on, and that our health really is in our hands. We have to be educated and understand that we have to step up and not be seduced and manipulated into buying certain products that are not going to serve our body. This body is the temple that houses the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit, and if we are not healthy, whole, and complete, we cannot serve Him to our fullest and our greatest ability. And it's love the Lord with all your might, and then love your neighbor as yourself. And how can you even love your neighbor if you can't love yourself? We have to love ourselves healthy and well so that we can love others healthy and well as well.
Man, that's true, because when you're empty, you have nothing to give. If you're
That's
just
right.
constantly trying to deal with your own health issues, there's nothing to give to your community or your family, really, for that matter. Now,
No.
and I just want to say that I have noticed too that you have so many wonderful pieces of advice for even young moms who are preparing snacks, and in how to make those fun but healthy so that children feel like it's a special treat. And I know I can even testify to my own daughter having given her babies vegetables and salad. And I see these kids that, or parents that say, well, they won't eat it. And I think, Well, mine sure did, because they were given those things at an early age. They were introduced as just a fun treat, and they love it. And to this day, they do. So I can testify to that most certainly. But let's talk about women who are, say, more in my age, passing over into the latter season of their life, and they're dealing with those
And my age
hormonal.
too.
Well, I wasn't going to say that. You're so young and beautiful still to me, but dealing with those hormonal imbalances, emotional imbalances, and stress that has piled up and piled up to where they feel overwhelmed. They're tired. They're exhausted, and they just don't know how to even put movement back into their lifestyle. Talk to us about where women are and how you'd like to help them.
Yeah. So as a naturopath, I'm really all about the holistic approach. So it's not just the food that we fuel our body. That's one piece of the puzzle, but it is also the movement. It's also how do we de-stress? How do we sleep better? How do we really learn how to have healthier relationships? Everything just spills over into the next area of our life. And so it's not a one answer solution. Okay. It's kind of like you've got to really master this in all area, but not to overwhelm you. It's doing that one simple thing in each area to help you get closer to your goal of being a better individual. And that might mean, for instance, regarding food, maybe it's putting a plant on every plate. You're just adding in some green. And getting rid of the foods that are dead, which are brown, white kind of foods that you see,
Yeah.
but more life-giving foods that are going to give you the phytonutrients and phytochemicals that your body deserves. And when you're fueling your body with the right vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, then you're going to not have cravings. You're going to help better balance your hormones. You're going to end up sleeping better, have more energy. Like that's all going to play a big factor, but also moving. What if it's something just like taking a walk? It doesn't have to be, get your Richard Simmons on, right? Like it doesn't have to be some workout like that. It could be simply just taking a walk, just movement, because sedentary lifestyles are a major cause of chronic illness. And
Yeah.
people don't realize that. And they may say, well, I work out. Well, that workout was only 30 minutes to an hour, but the rest of the time, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, you're sitting. That is
Wow.
devastating. Yeah, that's the average. People are sitting an average of 8 to 9 hours a day. And that's probably more, if you want to be honest. Once you have your hours of working, and then you come home and plop on the television
Yeah.
and watch your favorite TV show, right? So it's being aware and being intentional to just move your body. Regarding sleep, that's a big um, thing as far as getting that under wraps, so that you can have that balance, because that will help balance out your
Yeah.
hormones. If you're not getting good quality sleep, your hormones will continually to be imbalanced. So how do you do that? You start to lower your lights a little bit at night, start to dim those lights so that it starts to get that circadian rhythm back on track.
Naturally.
Stop the blue lights with the screens from the television to your cell phone, right? That we always have right there
Yeah.
next to us. So you have to start just doing intentional things that will allow your body to get into a rested state, and not, increase the parasympathetic nervous system. We
Oh,
really want to
yeah.
balance that out and calm it down. We're always kind of, jacked up, with our
Right.
adrenaline and things going 100 miles an hour. And what we're watching on TV is getting us, our parasympathetic nervous system all hyped up. And we want to calm. We want to be calm. And so obviously getting into God's word, prayer, meditation, it just all goes hand in hand. And it's not just a one and done. It's a daily practice. Daily practice.
As you're talking, I really sense even just the spiritual impact that this has, because you're addressing the whole person, not just parts of a person, and how, our emotions and our spiritual well-being affects our physical well-being. And I'm just thinking about how we're encouraged in the scriptures to live, the life of celebrating the Sabbath and coming into a place of rest. And I think that
Yes.
that oftentimes is kind of a misnomer for people. They just don't understand what does rest look like? What would that look like for me? And, how do I achieve that? Because we really live in a culture that just has driven us to complete breakdown. And it's a little scary if you ask me. I know I have to deal with a crazy schedule so much of the time, and I have to remind myself to stop and to schedule in what my body, what my soul, what my spirit, what I need, and I can't give out to anyone what I have not filled up in this cup. So what are the pitfalls that you find people default to when they're dealing with rest or diet or movement or any of these things? What are some of the most common pitfalls for people?
Well, I mean, really, all of it continually snowballs into overwhelm, right? People experience that overwhelm and that stress, and stress is a big one. We have to realize how to de-stress. But I think the pitfalls is that it causes a ripple effect. So it doesn't just affect us as an individual; it affects our family, our mood, and how we are just maybe lashing out at our family that they don't deserve it, right? Just because we are tapped out, we're maxed out, and we're afraid. We're just afraid. We're just taking in too much, and we have to just say stop. We have to be intentional about turning off the computer, turning off the TV, and just saying still, quiet, bringing in that intentional time to reflect and get renewed and restored. Because just like you said, we cannot give out of an empty vessel.
Right.
So that is the biggest pitfall, I believe, is that we aren't being intentional of having healthy boundaries and shutting things down, because we are in a world right now that there is so much information just thrown at us all the time that if we don't shut it off, it will continually come at us. And that's the only way to shut it down, is to be in control and do it yourself.
Do you think double-mindedness, for lack of a better term, plays a role where people maybe have not been able to deal with those emotions or those traumas or unforgiveness? Is that an issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think sometimes people don't really realize too that they're dealing with the issue until the trigger comes about in their life, and they're like, "Ooh, I thought I dealt with that," but then it comes back up, and then so yeah, it can be just an issue, double-mindedness for sure. I was going to read actually, this is, I had it right here. Proverbs 16:24, and it says, "Be not wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord." And I really want to talk about that.
Good.
Fearing the Lord, right? We are in a time right now where I don't see a lot of fearing of the Lord. And so we need to fear the Lord and turn away from evil. So turning away from sin, turning away from where we're missing the mark. It is healing to our flesh, and it's refreshment to our bones. So when we are turning away from the very thing that is obviously destroying us, then it will be healing, and God restores, and He will redeem even the time that maybe we've wasted in not taking good care of ourselves. And so giving yourself grace through the process of putting those intentional boundaries in your life, He will restore the time, and He will heal you, and you will feel the refreshing, just kind of honey, the way His words are like honey, right?
Yeah.
They just ooze and soothe every little inch of our bodies, and our minds and our souls. And so giving Him the time and energy that He deserves will give us the rest that we deserve.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that out as you read that proverb, because I don't think that people really understand that what we're talking about is our sinful nature and how that wants to, keep us bound up. And then, when you add to that, the fact that if you're a believer, you've got opposition in your life that wants to keep you bound by a stronghold. And so
Right.
if we're, you're not talking about shaming a person, but to be able to understand that these things that, I'm not sinning in the terms of, everything's allowable, but is this beneficial to me and to my temple? And am I living optimally the way God would have me to live? So, am I able to fulfill my purpose if I'm constantly struggling with inflammation,
Right.
brain fog, dealing with low energy, and all the things that would keep me marginalized?
Yeah.
So we're talking about culprits that sneak in, and we may not recognize them, but then once we do, and to the point that I was making earlier, I think oftentimes people have good intentions. They may start on a journey, and then there's that, weak moment that sabotages them. I can say that even for myself, I travel, and that makes it very difficult when you're traveling and you're having to eat on the road. And I know that sounds like a big excuse, and I'm not making an excuse. I'm just saying I understand where people are and the stress they're living under. But I also want to acknowledge that this is important, and it's a huge issue that I'm also right now giving attention to, because I realize that, the enemy he wants me sick. And God wants me well. So
Yes.
where am I going to give my attention to? And, I think that let's talk about how social structures can also be a part of that sabotage. Don't people struggle when socially they can't get other people on board with understanding what they're dealing with and the decisions and choices they're making? Because food and drink is always the center of our social
Yeah.
structures, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. And a lot of times, people don't even realize that. I mean, it's not their fault in some situations. Like they're literally addicted. They're
Yeah,
literally addicted to foods that are causing inflammation in their body,
right.
and they don't realize it. But they're getting a brain dump of dopamine and serotonin, and those are those feel good hormones. And so you're
Wow.
continually drawn to that kind of food. And that's the same thing with emotions as well, just so you know. But regarding socially, yeah, it's tough just because of even just peer pressure, or you put, let's talk about family traditions. If there's a lot of food around family
Yeah.
traditions, and if you're not partaking, then all of a sudden people are looking at you and saying, well, what's your problem? And why
Yeah.
aren't you, eating Aunt Susie's whatever that
Right.
she makes every year?
Macaroni.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, her macaroni and cheese. Yeah, why aren't you eating that? And so then they make it look like you're the outcast, and nobody
Right.
wants to feel
Right.
rejected. And I think that's the bigger thing is people do not they want to be included. And so that is a big issue. But when we understand that our health is our true wealth, and we step into that space knowing that, okay, they may try to reject me, but that's really just um, more about them, not me. And go into it with a loving, kind heart, and just let them know where you're at and why
Yeah.
you want to take care of yourself,
Yeah.
and give them grace through the process, and you too. It allows you to show up differently in those spaces. And also, when you're intentional in those social settings, like you bring your own food,
Yeah.
people will ask you questions, absolutely. But guess what? It may actually give someone else hope, and encourage them and give them that courage to step up into their healthiest, best self when you do. So that creates a ripple effect as well. So I do think social settings are big, but we can overcome that. And when we teach people how we desire to be treated, and how we are going to be showing up every time, just keep letting them know. Like my parents know when I visit that I'm going to be drinking almond milk instead of their milk or whatever.
Yeah.
They know this. They still give me a hard time after all these years, but it's okay. I just love them anyway. And guess what? They have changed a few of their habits because of watching me. I don't say a word, but more is caught than taught, not just to our children, but even our parents. So, same with your social circle whenever you're out with friends. So, how are you showing up, and how do you want to leave your social setting? Do you want to just kind of go with everybody else, or do you want to rise up and really be that healthier version of yourself, and let others be encouraged and inspired by that?
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
That's a good point. And I really want our viewers to recognize today that, so much of this they may have made it seem insurmountable, and it's just too much for me to try to handle. And I want to encourage people to reach out to you, because you really do offer a support, an emotional support. You offer the advice to be able to know how to handle some of those situations. And what we're talking about is really empowering the individual to walk in
Right.
that divine health, the divine purpose, and to be able to graciously say to someone else without all the issues, without the defensiveness, you know, I'm doing this because. And I think you're right. It is, there's more learned that from being caught, not taught. Is that how you said that? That's really powerful and good for us all to remember as we walk in this, this information. So let's talk about some of your success stories. I want to hear about, you know, somebody that's really struggled, really just had everything against them, and how did you help them out?
Well, I've got several stories I
I
could share,
know.
but I just think, gosh, I'm going to go with. I've got a couple here, but I want to share more of an emotional one.
Uh-huh.
I talk about Sheila often, and Sheila reached out to me. It was she lives in Minnesota where I do, and so it gets really cold in the winter and dark early, really, really. I mean everywhere, but really dark here during the winter time. And she was young mom, had two little kids, and she was in her pajamas for almost, it was like 2.5 weeks, and she was depressed and didn't know how to get out of that state. And she called me just crying, and I said, Sheila, I said, are you willing to do something for me? It may seem a little weird, but she's like, I'll do anything. And I said, I want you to put on your winter boots right over your pajamas. I want you to put on your coat and your scarf and your hat and your gloves. And I want you just to go for a walk, just around the block. And then I want you to call me when you get back. And she said, that is crazy. Cause it was probably about, I think it was minus 10 degrees. It was cold,
Oh,
right? It was 1st of January.
yeah.
And she's like, okay. So she called me back after she went for that walk, and she was crying with joy and giggling and couldn't believe how the depression had been lifted. She was literally in her pajamas for 2.5 weeks, couldn't cook for her children, couldn't be the wife to her husband that she wanted to be, couldn't function, couldn't go to work. She was paralyzed. And so sometimes we need somebody
Yeah.
that believes in us and pushes us into a place that isn't so comfortable so that we can break free of the stronghold that might be attacking us. And it might be just that simple, going for a walk around the block, because that release that positive endorphins, right? Those happy
Right.
hormones.
Yeah.
And she started to feel good. And she was like, oh my goodness, I can do this. So it's those little things that make a big difference, but it's having people in your corner that believe in you and will hold you accountable through the process and love you through it. I had another gal that was really at a plateau in her weight release. And I say release because it's about releasing unhealthy weight, but you have to release the unhealthy emotions
That's
attached to
good.
that weight. But she was in this plateau, and I said, well, let's talk about where you're at and what's going on emotionally. And so we talked through it, and we found out that she was really hanging on to an unforgiving place about something that had been done to her in the past. And so we did an exercise. It was just a writing exercise where she was able to write out to this person and tell them how much that she ended up forgiving them, I'm sorry that I put myself in this place, blah blah blah. Just she did the exercise and then burned the paper. But she released 5 pounds that week. She was at a plateau for 3 weeks, didn't release not 1 pound, and then in that 1 week 5 pounds gone. So there is something to be said about hanging on to those emotional unhealthy emotions that keeps that inflammation in your body, right? We don't
Yeah.
realize it, but it's so true.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah, those are small
It,
stories, but I mean,
any,
I've got major weight release
oh,
stories, but
yeah.
those are powerful.
Well, what about autoimmune? Anybody that has dealt, this is so
Yes.
common now. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Any success stories there?
Oh my goodness, so many, from fibromyalgia to rheumatoid arthritis to recently there was a gal Tara, and recently she dealt with endometriosis. Actually, I see recently she dealt with it for 12 years, and the doctor said she would never have children, and she was in a lot of pain, debilitating pain. She would end up going to bed like at 6 p.m. at night. Her and her husband weren't having the best relations because, well, she was in pain, and she was elementary school teacher, didn't have enough energy to do her job. Well, after working with me and doing Visibly Fit, after 3 weeks, she was no longer in pain. And I can say now that her little baby girl, Melody, is almost a year old. And so I'm telling you that God will restore
Wow.
your body and he will redeem the time. But it's fascinating how our bodies really are wired to be healthy, right? We just have to have the right tools and the right know-how and the right accountability to get there. But it's just a beautiful miracle story.
So good, so good. You know,
Yeah.
I could ask you a million more questions, and I think you're amazing. What we're talking about is really addressing the root issues of underlying health issues so that we are successful in the long term and we feel good and we're reaching our fullest potential, not just with a focus on weight loss. And that's, I think, what sets you apart. You know, Wendie, in the next 30 seconds, I'd love for you to just encourage that person that's watching today who is really, they've stumbled upon this program, maybe for the first time, and they've really been discouraged. They're dealing with health issues. They're dealing with tremendous amount of stress. Address some of these things just from the point of view of health and wellness so that they can actually become what they're intended to be. Would you encourage that person today?
Absolutely. I'd first like to tell you that you are not too far gone. It's not too late. You're not too old. God cares about you and he cares about the details of your life and he wants you healthy and well, and you deserve to be healthy and well, and you're worthy of taking care of yourself. So your health is your true wealth. And if you have struggled for a long time, don't keep staying in that place of thinking I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail. No, you are an overcomer and you can do this. You can get into the best health of your life. Even at this stage, if you're in a more mature years of your life, you can still get into your best health by taking small, simple steps and be encouraged and have accountability. So take that step today. And whether it's with me or somebody else, just do it because you are worthy. And guess what? Our creator is really worthy.
Amen. And how can we find you, Wendie?
You can go to wendiepett.com, and that's WENDIEPETT.com. And I also have a free green drink recipe that will help get rid of inflammation in your body at liveimmune.com. And I'll give that to you there.
Wonderful. Thank you for being with me. I hope we can do it again.
Me too. Thank you so much, Brenda.
Awesome. And friends, I want to thank you for being with us. I know that you were encouraged and that you found some inspiration by listening to Wendie today. Go visit her site and you take care of you because you matter. We'll see you again next time. I'm Brenda Crouch.